Hey everyone, so today we're going to be talking about shears. What fits your hand, what's out there, and how you should actually be scissoring. So a lot of people think that this is the important part of shears. And while it does all the work, this isn't what we're going to be talking about, okay? This is just candy. Well, the really important part is this, which is your shank. And so the thing is that what we need to know is that there are two types. What I'm holding in my hand, this is even set. Now, obviously, the word is pretty self-explanatory. Our finger rings are even set. And basically when you look at them, right, they're even at the top. So this is an even set scissor. Then the other type that there is offset. Okay, don't laugh at me. I know they're not grooming shears, but here in the recording studio, I don't have offsets because I am not an offset person. So giggle along and just, go with it. So offset shears, as this very much implies, are literally offset, right? So here, one of your finger rings is going to be lower than the other, and that is offset shears. Stop your giggling, I can hear it from here. So we have even set and we have offset. So these are really, really important. And now why is this important? Because if you don't have the correct shears in your hand, you will get fatigue really quickly throughout. And probably one of the worst parts of fatigue is if you have any sort of pain that happens from these points in your wrist, in this area, is that you are probably doing damage to the tendons. And then what would end up happening if you did damage to your tendons over and over and over again, you would probably end up having to have carpal tunnel surgery, right? So the damage that potentially could happen here, we sort out up here. So how do we end up doing that? Well, it's really, really interesting. So to know what your handset is, we need to look directly at your hands. So we take the scissors out of the equation and you're like, well, there's my hand. What's all about that? Okay, well, what we need to do first of all is look at your hand like this, okay? And we need your thumb tucked in. And then what we do is we actually take a line from the top of your palm, right? And if your thumb is under that line, which mine is, you're most likely even set. If your thumb is way above it, then you are most likely offset. Now, I, as an even set person, am having to really bend my hand to get that. You can literally see that I am like forcing my hand to make that line. Well, obviously you wouldn't want to do that, right? You would want your hand flat like this, thumb in, and then draw your line. You don't have to hyperextend when you're doing it. You want your hand fairly flat, and that is ultimately your guide. So if your thumb is below that line, you're most likely an even set. And if your thumb is above the line, then you're most likely an offset. So that is a really quick way to sort of look at how, which type of scissors, right, that you want in your hand. So once we have that sorted out and we have the right shears in your hand, then we have to learn how to hold them. So we never want to see our thumbs through like this. Okay, what it should always be when you're looking at your hand placement is that your thumb just sits right in there, right? And then if we get a little closer, let's make sure we're focused. It's not wanting to. So what we want to see is that our thumb is just ever so slightly through. So if you, oh my God. So what we want is that our thumb is just ever so slightly through. And you can actually see that I actually get an indent where my thumb sits, right? So we want just barely through. Then the other important finger that we use that goes through the finger rings is our screw-you finger, right? Or wedding ring finger. And that goes through here. So that goes through there. and then we're holding it like this. Now, one of the things that always sort of, well, it's not one, there's several, and we're going to go over them. What we always want to do is hug our scissors, and there should be no stress and no strain through our fingers here. Okay, so even though I'm holding my hand at a ridiculous angle right now in regards to being able to make sure that you guys can see everything properly, there still should be no strain or pressure through this part. Well, through no part of your hand, but I have a little bit just simply because of the way I'm bending my wrist so that you guys can see this a little bit easier. Okay, so we have our ring finger through, we have a beautiful hug going on that's going to our second knuckle, and then we have our thumb that's barely through. Now, when we look at scissoring, we should only move our thumb. Okay, so when you only move your thumb, and you move it from this joint here, right? We move it. And there's no movement except for right in here. That's the joint where all the movement comes from, okay? You can test this a couple of different ways. You can put your finger very gently on the tip, and what you want to feel is only, right, that one blade moving. And when you have that, it's really smooth and even. And what we're trying to do is make minimal movement in that motion so that we're not moving the scissors around. The other really important part, other than your thumb movement, is our finger movement. Now, one of the things, one of many different things, but that we see is that people will move their hands up the shank to the blade of the scissors. And this is really dangerous because, first of all, you're only going to use your shank, which is up to this point here. And if you point your finger like this, what are the chances of you doing damage to yourself? Pretty high. So let's never point. That is putting strain through your hand in this area, right? So we don't need any strain through here. It's not giving you any stability, and you have a chance of cutting your finger off. So let's not do that. What we need is a hug. And with that hug, we want very smooth motion. Now, once you've got your hand figured out as to how you hold, and that when we are doing our motions, we're only using our thumb and that there's no pressure, then what you want to do is start to practice different exercises. So this one where as you're scissoring, you move around as though it was a clock, okay? And go all the way around, right? All the way around. Just pretend it's the face of a clock. And all we want to do is move our thumb, right? And go all the way around. Now, if you have trouble with that, you can actually go up against a wall. And with that wall, you can actually put your scissors against it and do the same exercise to make sure that you are keeping your hand nice and smooth, right? So a good exercise to try when you are looking at your shears. One of the other ones that you can do up against a wall is that as you go, what you want to do is scissor, but scissor in a direction that is flat. And then if we were to actually look at it this way, if my hand was the wall and we're scissoring, right, what we don't want is this motion, okay? Because that's bouncing and it's going to cause issues within your scissoring. So if you take all those into account and you start practicing and using just your thumb motion, another great way when you're testing it is if you cup your hand with your other hand and practice this way. It's really quite funny because this hand will tattle if you're moving this side of your hand, right? So if you were doing, sorry, I have to actually think about it. If you were doing this motion, and you had your hand here, this hand would tattle on you, right? If you were moving it. So that's a great way to help with those skills if there's not somebody watching you. So give those a try. Make sure that you have the correct hand set for your scissors. make sure that you have that. There is a book, Scissors Up by Anna Hawks, which is absolutely fabulous, and it shows you how to measure your hand. And she has different pictures that you can actually put your hand right up to. So you can always get that book. There is so much in Scissors Up that is fabulous. So huge shout out to Anna Hawks for making that book. I think every salon and every person who actually sells shears should actually have that, because I've seen far too many people get sold scissors that don't even fit their hand. So major kudos to Anna Hawks for making that book, because you want to know how. This was just a quick video in how to measure your hand for which hand set, and then going through and holding your shears correctly. Hopefully you found that helpful. Follow us and subscribe to keep getting informed on all of our free educational videos. Have a great one.